Hello everyone, and welcome to Train Talk. Today we will be looking at what is one of my all-time favorite diesel-electric locomotives, the Electro-Motive division-built F40PH. This is quite arguably the locomotive that saved passenger rail in the United States. This seemed like a fitting locomotive to discuss on Train Talk, as 2016 marks 40 years since the first F40 was built. First, we'll have a brief technical discussion on the locomotive, followed by a look at the history, and then where the F40 is still being used today. This engine has passed the test of endurance, racking up millions of miles for Amtrak, all while achieving great reliability rates. So first, what is an F40? The F40PH is a passenger locomotive that was developed in a joint effort between General Motors' Electro-Motive division, which builds railroad locomotives, and Amtrak. We will learn all about locomotive model numbers and designations in a future episode, but for today's purposes, the F signifies that the body covers the full width of the frame, the 40 is the actual locomotive model series, the P indicates that this is a passenger locomotive, and the H denotes that the engine is designed to supply electricity for the passenger cars. The term for this is head-end power, which is why the letter H is used. The F40 is a 3,000 horsepower locomotive with a total of 4 axles. It was based off the GP40 freight locomotive, but is geared to run at faster speeds for passenger service. Some versions were able to reach a top speed of 110 miles per hour. Amtrak chose to have a top speed of 103 miles per hour on all of their F40s. In order to generate enough energy to power the lights and heating for the passenger cars, the locomotive's diesel engine, a V16 turbocharged EMD 645 block motor, runs at a constant RPM. As a result, the sound that the engine makes does not change as it accelerates or decelerates. This very unique characteristic earned the locomotives the nickname Screamers. The first batch of F40s was delivered to Amtrak in 1976 after the railroad had a series of issues with their slightly older SDP-40F type locomotives. Amtrak was so satisfied with the new F40 that they soon replaced the vast majority of their passenger locomotive fleet with F40s. Eventually, the railroad would own a total of 216 of these engines, numbered 200 to 415. In the early 1990s, the F40 was replaced in the EMD catalog with the F59 locomotive. During this time, Amtrak was also looking for suitable replacements for their F40s. The first engines purchased to begin the replacement process were the General Electric P32-BWH-8 locomotives delivered in 1991. These were essentially freight engines that were modified slightly for passenger service. Amtrak eventually settled on the General Electric Genesis series of locomotives to replace the rest of their F40s. These consisted of 44 P40DC type engines built in 1993 and 207 P42DC locomotives built between 1996 and 2001. Shortly after all the P42s were delivered to Amtrak, the last F40 made its final run. 22 F40s were converted to non-powered control units for use as cab cars on various regional Amtrak routes. The prefix 90 was added to the original number of the F40 that was being converted. For instance, engine 230 was converted into non-powered control unit number 90230. All of these units are still in service today. F40PH number 406 was also converted into a non-powered control unit, but it was fitted with a generator for head-end power. It is used with Amtrak's exhibit train that travels across the country to various display locations each year. 8 of Amtrak's F40s still remain stored on railroad property. All the others have been sold, donated to museums, or scrapped. 3 of Amtrak's F40s were purchased by the Grand Canyon Railway for use in service between Williams, Arizona and the south rim of the Grand Canyon. These engines have all been re-geared to run at freight train speeds and are now designated F40FH. Another short-line tourist hauler that employs a few ex-Amtrak F40s is Iowa Pacific. Here, the Iowa Pacific's Rio Grande Scenic Tourist Train is seen near Alamosa, Colorado, with 2 of these engines. In Nashville, Tennessee, the new commuter service Music City Star employs 4 of Amtrak's old F40s. These engines have been modified very little since being sold. Of the engines, number 381 still wears the Amtrak Surfliner paint job it received in the early 2000s. Metrolink Commuter Rail out of the Los Angeles area owns a solitary F40PH from Amtrak. This engine was supposed to be part of a rebuild program with 3 other locomotives, but those plans were never carried out. Instead, the engine has spent the last several years serving as a backup engine to rescue trains that have broken down, earning it the nickname tow truck. Several other railroads besides Amtrak have purchased their own F40s new from EMD over the years. Chicago Metra now has by far the largest fleet, consisting of over 100 F40PH locomotives. In spring of 2015, the Massachusetts Bay Transportation Authority out of Boston retired the last of its fleet of 18 F40 locomotives. These locomotives differ from those owned by Metra and Amtrak in that they do not have dynamic braking equipment and thus lack a large dynamic braking fan that is usually found toward the middle of the locomotive's roof. Seen here in the winter of 2015 are engines 1002 and 1008 as they live out their final days of service. Caltrain, running in the San Francisco Bay Area, has a fleet of F40s as well. 20 of these engines were built in 1984. Several were modified in the late 1990s to have a separate head-end power generator, resulting in a lower fuel consumption. To accomplish this, the end of the body was extended over the back walking platform. The F40 was such a popular locomotive design that several commuter service variants were built by a company called Morrison Knudsen in Boise, Idaho. This company later became Motive Power Inc. F40 commuter variants have separate head-end power generators to increase fuel efficiency and an extended body. The Coast Express Rail in San Diego, California, otherwise known as Coaster, purchased 5 new F40PH-2C locomotives in 1994. These engines, like other F40s, can generate 3,000 horsepower but are only geared to reach a top speed of 90 miles per hour. In addition to their 18 now retired F40s, MBTA also owns many F40PH-2C commuter models, most of which are still seen in daily service. Caltrain has also purchased commuter F40s. 3 of these engines were built for Caltrain in the late 1990s. One distinct feature of these engines is that they do not have a headlight on the nose of the locomotive. Finally, Altamont Corridor Express, running between Stockton and San Jose, California, owns 6 F40PH-3C locomotives, the newest of which was built in the mid-2000s. This engine, number 3106, is probably the last F40 ever built. The F40 has served the United States passenger rail system well for the last 4 decades. It saved passenger rail at a time when the future of these trains was in question and Amtrak was struggling with ailing locomotives. But now, the sunset shines on the F40's legacy as more and more of these engines are retired each year. As second-hand engines begin to wear out, commuter operators will continue to replace these engines with more modern, fuel-efficient, and low-emissions diesel locomotives. And, while they will become even more relegated to tourist railroads, short lines, and museums in the coming years, one thing is certain: the F40 has left its permanent mark on the history of passenger rail. Thanks for watching this episode of Train Talk. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to let me know by liking it and leaving a comment in the comment section. Also, if you have an idea for an episode of Train Talk, be sure to let me know. Until next time, I'm Mike Armstrong. I'll see you down the line.